Theo called me at 6:40 on a Wednesday and didn't bother with hello. "Please tell me you're not busy," he said, and I could hear a wrench clinking against metal in the background. "Bee's swim practice ends in 20 minutes and I've got a customer here who's threatening to leave a 1-star review if I don't true her wheel by 7. "What's a trued wheel?" "Not the point, Milo." "Address?" "You know the address." I did. I'd known the pool's parking lot layout for 2 years, ever since Bee had started swimming competitively and Theo had started running a bike shop that ate his evenings whole. I grabbed my keys and my coat and told myself, the way I always did, that this was just what you did for your best friend. Bee was 15 minutes into arguing that instant ramen counted as a vegetable-adjacent food group when Theo finally walked into the shop's back kitchen. Grease striped along his jaw like war paint, hair pushed 6 different directions. "You're alive," I said. "Debatable." He dropped his keys into the coffee can he used as a bowl and looked at the ramen, then at Bee's half-finished poster board spread across the workbench. Something about torque and gear ratios for her innovation fair project, due tomorrow and clearly not ready. His shoulders came down an inch. "You fed her." "I fed her something. I make no claims about nutrition." "I'm considering a raise." "I'd take a thank you." That joke should have landed the way 1,000 jokes between us had landed over 11 years. Easy, weightless, gone the second it left my mouth. Instead, it caught somewhere behind my ribs and stayed there. Theo didn't notice. He was already crouched by Bee's chair, reading her poster upside down, asking her what a derailleur had to do with a science fair project shaped like a go-kart. She snapped that she already knew what she was doing. He didn't snap back. He just said, "Show me the math again," and reached for a pencil. I had known Theo through 3 girlfriends, 1 bad motorcycle purchase, a broken collarbone, and the year his father died, and he came back from the funeral smelling like a church I'd never been inside. I had never once watched him be gentle with someone the way he was gentle with his sister. Patient in a way that had nothing performative in it, like it cost him nothing because it wasn't a performance at all. 15 minutes later, he was wiping down the workbench while quizzing Bee on gear ratios, and without looking, he reached behind himself and handed me a mug of tea. Honey, no milk, steeped exactly as long as I liked it, which was longer than anyone else found reasonable. "You look wrecked," I said. "I am wrecked." "That's not permission to fall asleep on the register." He smiled at me over his shoulder, softer than the joke deserved. "Good thing you're here, then." I looked at him a second too long. It was absurd. This was Theo, the guy whose disastrous high school haircut I had on film. The guy who once called me at 2 a.m. to ask if ranch dressing counted as a salad. And I had never once put him in any category that required me to notice the exact geometry of his forearms under a rolled-up sleeve. Bee called him back to the poster. He went. I watched him go and had the distinct, uncomfortable sensation of something having been sitting in plain sight for a very long time, waiting for me to finally look at it straight on. The feeling did not wear off by morning. It followed me through the week like a burr caught in a sock. Thursday, Theo texted asking if I was near the hardware store. I was, technically, if you counted a 15-minute detour as near. 20 minutes after that, I was pushing a cart down the fastener aisle while Bee sent us a running list of things she'd forgotten from her phone at home. "She wants a soldering iron," I read aloud. "Denied?" "Denied," Theo agreed. "She's 15, not defusing a bomb." I feel like that's exactly the age range that gets into bomb defusing. He laughed, really laughed, the kind that crinkled the corner of his eyes, and reached past me for the shelf of hand cream, the specific brand I used because ink and paper cracked my knuckles raw in the winter, and dropped it into the cart without asking. I noticed. I'd started noticing everything. Saturday, I drove Bee to pick up poster board while Theo caught up on invoices. Sunday evening, I showed up and found 3 plates already set on the table. "You knew I was coming?" I asked. Theo glanced at me like the question itself was strange. "You always come Sunday." He was right. I had never once thought of it as a routine before. I'd thought of every Sunday as its own small, spontaneous decision. Bee, apparently, had known better for months. Halfway through dinner, she slid her phone across the table toward Theo, and I watched his face do something complicated as he read it. About the fair? I asked. It's not a big deal, Bea said, very interested in her noodles. Theo gave me a look that said it was, in fact, a very big deal. The school was holding a family night in 3 weeks. Parents and guardians walking the gym floor while kids presented their projects. The kind of event that made Bea go quiet for days beforehand because it always meant explaining, again, why her 29-year-old brother was the one signing the permission slip. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, Theo told her. I know, but if you go, I want... She stopped, poked at her noodles, then said it fast, like ripping tape. Can Milo come too? The words were so casual I almost missed the weight under them. Theo looked at me. Bea kept eating like she hadn't just rearranged something. Can I? I asked, which was a stupid question. Why are you asking me? Theo said. Because she's your sister, and I don't want to step on... You've been showing up for her since she was 11. His voice had gone quiet in a way I didn't have a name for yet. Come. Okay, I said. Yeah, of course. Bea's shoulders dropped half an inch. Relief she probably didn't know she was showing. Under the table, Theo's knee found mine. Neither of us moved. When I left that night, he handed me a container of leftovers I hadn't asked for. Wednesday? He said. What's Wednesday? Bea's got her orthodontist thing. I figured you'd come by after. Did we make that plan? He frowned, actually trying to remember, and couldn't. Guess not. You're just assumed now. Apparently, I said, and smiled, but something in his face flickered first, like he'd only just heard himself say it out loud. I should have teased him about it. Instead, I looked past him at the third plate, still sitting in the drying rack, and wondered when, exactly, his apartment above the shop had stopped being somewhere I visited. By the time family night arrived, I'd stopped pretending the Wednesdays and the hardware store trips were isolated favors. I still hadn't figured out what to call them instead. Theo and I hauled Bea's go-kart project into the gym together, falling into the kind of wordless division of labor that comes from years of practice. He checked the wiring, I wrangled the folding table that refused to sit level. Left leg's shorter, he said. I know it's shorter. So are you. I'm holding a car battery. Excuse me for my posture. He bumped my shoulder with his on the way past. It lasted maybe a second. I felt it for considerably longer than that. The gym filled with families in 2s and 3s, asking the usual polite questions about voltage and torque. Theo hovered near Bea without smothering her. When she needed something, he got it. When he was pulled aside by a teacher, I filled in. None of it was planned. That was, apparently, what made it visible. A woman helping run the check-in table stopped beside us while Theo was untangling a wire under the table. She smiled at me. You two make a good team. Bea's lucky to have both of you. I opened my mouth, already halfway to explaining that I was just the friend, just the guy who drove her to swim practice. Theo looked at Bea first. Bea had heard. She didn't do the flinch I'd seen her do 100 times when strangers asked about her family. She just nodded, like it was obvious, and went back to her clipboard. Theo smiled at the woman. She built the whole thing herself. That was it. No correction. Later, I caught him near the trophy case while Bea was demonstrating for a teacher. She thought I was family, I said. Theo looked genuinely confused by my tone. You are family. Something dropped through my stomach that made no logical sense. That's not exactly what she meant. Understanding crossed his face for half a second, there and gone. He glanced back through the doorway at his sister, easy and unguarded in a way she hadn't been an hour ago. She was comfortable, he said. I wasn't going to make it a whole thing by correcting somebody. Right. Does that bother you? No. The word came out too fast to be believed. He studied me, but Bea called his name before he could say anything else, and the moment closed like a door. That night, after Bea went to bed, I noticed things I'd never bothered counting before. The way Theo automatically left the middle couch cushion open for me. The way he asked if I wanted tea without asking if I was staying. The way my presence had gotten folded into the architecture of his evenings without either of us signing off on it. None of it was new. That was the problem. I'd started wondering how long it had actually been there. After that, I began testing the edges of my place in his life, without admitting that was what I was doing. I stopped letting myself into the shop with the spare key. The first time, Theo opened the door and just stared at me. "You lost your key?" "No." "Then why are you standing on the mat like a delivery?" "Normal people knock." "You stopped being normal people about 6 years ago." He turned and walked back toward the kitchen, leaving the door open behind him. Inside, I noticed my tea in the cupboard, not just the brand, a full second box behind the open one. My hand cream sat next to the bike grease under the sink. A hoodie I'd left there once, torn at the elbow the last time I'd seen it, was folded on the couch, whole. "You replaced this?" Theo glanced over from the stove. "The old one had a hole." "You didn't have to." "Then you'd complain every time you got cold here." He said it like it explained everything. Maybe it did. That was what unsettled me. Later, while B did homework upstairs, he asked me to look over the shop's schedule with him. He'd rearranged deliveries around her practices and wanted a second opinion. I stayed standing instead of pulling up my usual stool. "You can handle it," I said. "I know I can." "Then you don't need me checking it." "I didn't say I needed you to." Something shifted in his voice. "I ask you because I want to know what you think." I reached for my coat. "I should head home." "It's 9. Exactly. Since when does 9 matter?" "Since when have you been counting?" He watched me, a crease between his eyebrows. "What's going on, Milo?" "Nothing." "You're acting like a guest in my kitchen." I had no safe answer, because the spare key felt different in my pocket now, and the hoodie folded on the couch felt different, and hearing him say, "You are family," had rearranged something I couldn't put back the way it was. "Maybe I got too comfortable," I said finally. His face went tight. "I never said you were." B called down for help with something before either of us could say more. He stood, but his eyes stayed on me a second longer. "Don't leave yet." It sounded less like an instruction and more like a request. I sat back down, and while he went upstairs, I stared at the key on my palm and wondered whether I was afraid of misreading this or afraid of finally reading it right. He came back down 20 minutes later to find me exactly where he'd left me, the key back in my pocket, having talked myself out of leaving at least 4 times. "She's asleep," he said. "Good, you're still here. You told me not to leave." His mouth did something that wasn't quite a smile. He filled the kettle and leaned on the counter while it heated. The apartment felt different with B asleep. Quieter. No homework to referee, no practical reason for me to be standing 3 feet from my best friend at 10 at night. "Are you going to tell me what's happening?" he asked. "Nothing's happening." "You started knocking on my door, Milo." "You're really stuck on that." "You have a key. For emergencies." "That isn't why I gave it to you." He said it, and then looked like he'd heard himself a beat too late. "Then why?" He exhaled. "Because you're here all the time." "Exactly." "I don't understand why that suddenly bothers you." "It doesn't." "Then what does?" I could have lied again. Instead, I looked around his kitchen. The tea he'd bought for me, the hoodie without a hole, the second key that had never once felt like an emergency measure, and felt exhausted by pretending any of it meant nothing. "I don't know what I'm doing here anymore," I said. Theo went still. "You're helping me." The safest possible answer. I laughed, no humor in it. "Right. Helping." That came out wrong. Did it? "Yes." He pushed off the counter. "I don't think of you as the guy I call when B needs a ride. I never have." "Then what am I?" The question hung there. He looked at me long enough that I became aware of every inch of space left between us. "I don't know how to answer that without changing something," he said quietly. My pulse stumbled. Maybe something already did. He stepped closer, not close enough to touch, close enough that I could have moved away, and didn't. His eyes had an uncertainty in them I had almost never seen. "What are we talking about?" he asked. "I think you know." "I want to hear you say it." "That's convenient. I'm terrified." That surprised a laugh out of him, low and real, and for a second the tension nearly broke. Then his hand came up slow, stopping just short of my jaw, giving me every chance to step back. I didn't. I leaned into it before I could stop myself.
He inhaled like it cost him something. I thought he was going to kiss me. I wanted him to. That thought hit hard enough that I stepped back first, and his hand dropped immediately. Neither of us spoke. The kettle clicked off behind him. "That didn't feel like friendship," he finally said. "No." My voice barely worked. It didn't. He looked frightened and relieved in the same breath. I understood, because I felt exactly the same. Nothing else happened that night. When I walked home, his fingers still seemed to be resting against my jaw, and the question following me had changed shape. I no longer wondered if I was seeing him differently. I wondered what he was going to do now that he knew. For the next few days, we performed a version of normal that convinced no one. I still answered when he called. I stopped dropping by without a reason. When I did go over, I knocked, and he never once mentioned it, which was worse than if he had. Wednesday, I showed up for dinner and found my usual plate waiting. He looked at me, then deliberately looked away. B complained about a teacher, and we slid into our old roles. He cooked, I listened, she complained. Everything worked. Nothing felt the same. At one point, he reached past me for a dish and stopped himself before our arms touched. The correction hurt more than it should have. After B went upstairs, he started clearing the table. "Leave it," I said. "I've got it." "I know." The echo of his own words from days earlier landed between us. He leaned on the counter. "Milo, I need to know what we're doing." "So do I." "I can't pretend the other night didn't happen." "I'm not asking you to." "You're barely here." "Maybe I was here too much before." His jaw tightened. "There it is again. You talking like you accidentally wandered into our lives and stayed too long." I looked toward the stairs. "This isn't only about us." "I know. B depends on me now. I'm part of her routine." "I know that too. If we try this and it goes wrong, I don't just lose my best friend. She loses someone." He rubbed a hand over his face. "You think I haven't thought about that?" "I think you haven't thought about much else since you touched my face." He didn't deny it. That was answer enough. I started coming around less after that. Not vanishing, just cutting the unnecessary hours, the tea after dinner, the lazy Sunday afternoons with no task to justify them. The effect was immediate. He stopped assuming I'd be there. B started asking if I was coming instead of assuming it. One evening, he handed me the hand cream I'd left, unused, on his counter. "Take this." "Why?" "Because apparently you're not around enough to need it here anymore." The bitterness surprised us both. "Theo, I didn't buy that. You did." "I bought the tea, too." He said it, then stopped, like he'd let something slip he'd been holding on to. "And I fixed the hoodie." "You never said that." "Why would I?" "Because I would have noticed sooner if you had." He looked away first. "Forget it." I couldn't. "How long have you been doing things like that?" A short, frustrated laugh. "This is exactly why I didn't want to start pulling threads." "That's not an answer." "No, it isn't." He set the hand cream back on the counter, between us, unclaimed. "B's fair project is done. You're still coming Saturday, right?" "I promised her." He nodded like the answer cost him something. After that, I knew what he was really asking, and I didn't have an answer that wouldn't hurt one of us. "Maybe I should give us some space," I said. His face went carefully blank. "Right." I left the hand cream on the counter and walked out. Standing outside his closed door, key heavy in my pocket, I wondered whether protecting what we had was the same thing as letting it die quietly. Saturday, I showed up at the fair exactly when I'd promised. Theo was already there with B. For one long second, we looked at each other across the gym like two people who'd forgotten how to close a distance they used to ignore without thinking. Then B spotted me. "You came." I said I would. Her smile was quick and unguarded, and something in my chest twisted at how easy it was for her now.
compared to 3 weeks ago. The showcase went smoothly. When her go-kart needed steadying, Theo took one side and I took the other. Same old rhythm, no discussion required. When he got pulled into a conversation with a teacher, I stayed with her. From the outside, nothing looked broken. That was the problem. Back at the apartment that evening, B thanked us both and disappeared upstairs, tired and pleased, leaving Theo and me alone in the kitchen. The hand cream still sat on the counter where I'd left it. I meant what I said, I told him. About space. Yeah, he crossed his arms. You came today because you promised B. I know, and that's exactly why this is complicated. I'm already part of things here that don't disappear just because we make a mistake. You keep talking like being part of this happened to you. Maybe I let it go too far without thinking it through. You think I wasn't thinking? I don't know what you were thinking, Theo. That's the problem. He turned away, braced both hands on the counter, silent except for the refrigerator humming. Finally, the tea wasn't an accident. I figured that out. Neither was the hoodie. He faced me again. Or the key. You said that was for emergencies. That was the excuse that made it easy to hand you one. He kept going, like a dam had finally given. Sunday dinners weren't accidents either. I asked B what she wanted to eat based on what I knew you'd like. I asked your opinion on things I could have decided alone because asking you to come over just because I wanted you here felt like saying too much. I didn't speak. Everything I'd filed under convenience for months was rearranging itself at once. How long? I asked. He swallowed. Longer than these last few weeks. You knew I wanted to be around more than I should want my best friend around. Yeah. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were the safest person I had, and B finally had something stable. His voice dropped. I wasn't going to risk both because I wanted something I had no reason to think you wanted back. I know that's not fair. I know that too. He looked wrecked saying it, and I hated that part of me wanted to cross the kitchen and hold him anyway. Theo, I never wanted you here because I couldn't manage without you. I wanted you here because when you left, the whole place felt wrong. That was almost enough to undo me. Almost. But understanding the past didn't tell me what came next. I picked up my coat. His face changed. You're leaving tonight? Yes. And after tonight? I made myself meet his eyes. I don't know. He nodded like the honesty cost more than a lie would have. I walked out with the key heavy in my pocket. He didn't ask for it back. I didn't offer. Outside, I finally understood I hadn't accidentally become part of his life. He'd been making room for me on purpose, the whole time. What I still didn't know was whether either of us was brave enough to admit what that room was actually for. The next evening I went back, telling myself it was only to drop off a multimeter Bea had left at my place. I could have left it on the doorstep. Instead, I used the key. Theo was at the stove. He looked up, and his eyes dropped to the key in my hand for half a second before he looked away. Bea's upstairs, he said. I brought her multimeter. I set it on the counter. The hand cream was still there, exactly where I'd left it. Okay. His voice was careful. Thanks. I should have walked out then. That had been the plan. Finish the errand, keep the distance, give us both room to decide if 11 years of friendship mattered more than whatever had started between us. I reached the doorway before he said, "Don't." I stopped. Don't what? Don't leave again while I let you pretend that's the responsible thing to do. I turned around. His hands were braced white-knuckled on the counter edge. I spent all day telling myself you were right, that B matters, that stability matters, that you matter enough that I should protect what we already have instead of risking it. It sounds reasonable. His jaw worked. It's also a lie. I said nothing. He crossed the kitchen until only a few feet separated us. I'm scared that if we try this and it falls apart, I lose my best friend. I'm scared B loses someone she trusts. I'm scared I've built you into this apartment so completely I don't know how to undo it. His voice tightened. But I'm more scared I'm going to keep calling you my friend because it's safe, until you actually believe that's all I want from you. My heartbeat was loud enough that I was sure he could hear it. What do you want? He held my gaze. You. One word, nowhere to hide behind it. Not because B needs you. She has me. That's my job. Not because I need help closing the shop or fixing dinner. I can manage those. He stepped closer. I want you here when there's nothing left to fix. I swallowed. Theo, I want Sunday dinners when nobody needs anything from you. I want your tea in my cupboard because you're going to drink it, not because I'm hoping you'll stay. I want to buy you another stupid hand cream when that one runs out. And I want to stop pretending every reason I ask you to come over is about somebody else. His eyes were bright, but he didn't look away. If saying that ruins what we had, then at least I ruined it telling you the truth. There it was, the risk I'd been demanding of him without admitting that's what I wanted. You don't get to decide this alone, I said. I know. Good, because I'm scared too. I closed the last of the distance between us. I've spent weeks trying to decide if wanting you would make everything harder. It will. I laughed, soft and shaky. Terrible sales pitch. I'm trying honesty. Then here's mine. I reached for his hand. I don't want to go back to being the guy who helps and leaves. He went very still. What do you want instead? To stay. Because I'm choosing to, not because anyone needs a ride somewhere. His fingers closed around mine. As what? You really need it spelled out? Yes. I smiled, fear and all. As your boyfriend. If you can survive saying the word out loud. He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. My boyfriend. Then his hand found my jaw again, exactly where it had that first night, except this time neither of us stepped back. I kissed him. It was careful for about half a second before 11 years of knowing each other collided with weeks of wanting something we hadn't known how to name. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. Nothing about the shop, or B, or the risk ahead had gotten simpler. But he was still holding my hand. Stay? He asked. This time there was no excuse hidden inside the question. Yeah, I said. I'm staying. 3 weeks later, I stood at Theo's stove making dinner, while B complained from the table that apparently being 15 meant everyone expected her to have a 5-year plan. You could start with a plan for your algebra homework, Theo said. That's completely different. Obviously, I said into the pan, and B threw a balled-up napkin at both of us. She'd been different since family night. Not dramatically, just less braced. She didn't flinch anymore when someone asked who was picking her up. Theo was still her brother and her guardian. I was still Milo. Neither label needed to get cleaner than that. My relationship with Theo, on the other hand, had finally acquired one. Boyfriend still felt strange to say sometimes, mostly because it made something new out of a person I'd known for over a decade. My tea had permanent shelf space now. The hand cream lived under the sink without irony. There were clothes of mine in a drawer Theo swore was just efficient storage, and not, in fact, a drawer he'd cleared out weeks before either of us said anything true to each other. I'd pointed out that quietly making room for me was exactly how this whole problem started. He'd kissed me instead of arguing. That night I finished dinner and started clearing the counter before he could. You don't have to do that, he said, coming up beside me. I know. I can handle it. I know that too. I looked at him. He smiled, catching the call back before I said it out loud. Thank you for helping, he said, and then stopped himself. B glanced up from her homework. What? He shook his head, but his expression had gone soft. I was going to thank you for helping, and I realized that's not really what this is anymore. B made a gagging noise and grabbed her books. If you two are about to have a moment, I'm going upstairs. Algebra, Theo called after her. I know! When her door shut, I looked back at him. So, you don't need my help? Never said that. He stepped closer, hand at my waist. I need help sometimes. So do you. That's not why I want you here, though. The words didn't scare me anymore. I glanced around the kitchen that had once felt like his, then like a place I might have stayed in too long without asking. and now just felt like mine too, because I'd chosen it, key and all.
Then why am I here? I asked, just to hear him say it. He smiled. Because we're building something, together. I kissed him once, quick and easy, and turned back to the dishes. He stayed beside me, drying what I washed, even though neither of us needed the help at all.